Mark Winger. Mark Winger was celebrated as a hero. He had defended his wife from a crazed intruder, shot the attacker in self-defense, and buried his beloved spouse as a grieving widower. The community embraced him. Police closed the case in 48 hours. But 3 Polaroid photographs told a different story, and the woman who eventually revealed the truth was the one he had been sleeping with all along. Mark Allen Winger was born November 26, 1962, in Elyria, Ohio. He graduated from Virginia Military Institute with a degree in physics, served in the United States Army, and later worked as a nuclear safety engineer at a state facility in Springfield, Illinois, earning approximately $72,000 per year. He was, by all appearances, the model of American success. Donna Ellen Brown was an operating room technician from Florida. The two met on a blind date in late 1987 and married on March 4, 1989. They settled in Springfield. Because Donna could not bear children, the couple adopted a baby daughter named Bailey Elizabeth on June 1, 1995. 6 days before everything changed, Donna had been driven home from Lambert International Airport in St. Louis by a shuttle bus driver named Roger Harrington. Harrington was 27 years old and a former psychiatric patient. During the ride, he reportedly drove erratically and made disturbing comments. Donna filed a formal complaint. Harrington was suspended. This incident would become the foundation for what happened next. On August 29, 1995, at approximately 4:30 in the afternoon, Mark Winger called 911 from his home on Westview Drive. He claimed he had heard noises, ran to the dining area, and found Roger Harrington bludgeoning Donna with a claw hammer. Mark said he shot Harrington twice in the head in defense of his wife. Both victims were still breathing when transported to Memorial Medical Center. Harrington succumbed to 2 bullet wounds to the head. Donna passed from massive head injuries shortly after. Harrington's maroon Oldsmobile was parked in front of the Winger home. Police accepted Winger's account. Sangamon County State's Attorney Patrick Kelly stated he anticipated no charges would ever be filed. The case was closed within approximately 48 hours. Mark Winger was regarded as a community hero. He received $25,000 from a crime victims fund and $150,000 from Donna's life insurance. He wrote a letter to the local newspaper thanking the community for their support. But there was something the community did not know. Before Donna's passing, Mark had been having an affair with Deanne Schultz, Donna's best friend. The affair had begun approximately 1 month before August 29th. Mark's plan was to end Donna's life, marry Deanne, and raise Bailey together. Instead, in January 1996, Mark hired a 23-year-old woman named Rebecca Simic as a nanny and married her approximately 14 months later. Deanne was jilted. But why would a jilted mistress stay silent for 4 years? In 1999, Deanne Schultz came forward to police. She revealed the affair, Mark's expressed dissatisfaction with his marriage, and her suspicion that he was responsible. Detective Doug Williamson, who had never believed Winger's story, pushed to reopen the case. Re-examination revealed critical inconsistencies. Body positions contradicted Winger's self-defense account. 3 Polaroid photographs taken by Officer David Barringer at the crime scene proved the bodies could not have fallen the way Mark described. Paramedic testimony contradicted his claim of holding Donna as she passed. Evidence in Harrington's car indicated Mark had invited Harrington to the home, luring an innocent, mentally ill man as a patsy. Mark Winger was arrested on August 16, 2001, and charged with 2 counts of first-degree taking of life. His trial took place from May through June 2002 in Sangamon County. Key evidence included Deanne Schultz's testimony, recorded conversations showing Winger had arranged a meeting with Harrington on the day of the incident, paramedic testimony contradicting his claims, and blood spatter analysis. He was convicted on both counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While incarcerated, Winger befriended fellow inmate Mark Hubble and in 2005 approached him about eliminating Deanne Schultz and kidnapping a childhood friend who had refused to post his $1 million bail. He wrote a 19-page handwritten plan. Hubble contacted authorities and wore a concealed recording device. In June 2007, Winger was convicted of 2 counts of solicitation and sentenced to an additional 35 years. As of 2026, Mark Winger remains incarcerated at Western Illinois Correctional Center. Status in custody, projected discharge ineligible. He is 63 years old. Roger Harrington, an innocent man with mental health challenges, was blamed for years. Donna's own family supported her actual assailant. The case only broke open when Mark's jilted former mistress came forward, and re-examination of 3 Polaroid photographs proved the body's positions were inconsistent with self-defense. Mark Winger built his deception on the mental illness of a stranger. The next case involves a deception far more elaborate, constructed over years by a daughter who fabricated an entire life rather than disappoint her parents. Jennifer Pan. She had a university degree, a pharmacology career, and a volunteer position at a children's hospital. None of it was real. For years, Jennifer Pan maintained an elaborate fiction for her immigrant parents, complete with forged transcripts, fake diplomas, and counterfeit pay stubs. When the deception finally collapsed, she did not confess. She arranged for hired men to enter her family home in the middle of the night. Hue Han Pan and Beach Ha Pan were ethnic Chinese Vietnamese refugees who came to Canada in 1979. Both worked at Magna International, an auto parts manufacturer. They purchased a home in Markham, Ontario, in the Unionville neighborhood in 2004. They were tiger parents with high academic expectations for their 2 children, Jennifer and Felix. Jennifer trained as a figure skater until a torn knee ligament in 8th grade ended that dream. Her actual high school grades averaged around 70%, except in music. She forged report cards to show straight A's. When she failed calculus in grade 12, Ryerson University rescinded her early admission. Rather than tell her parents, Jennifer pretended to attend university for years. She sat in cafes, taught piano, worked in restaurants, purchased secondhand textbooks, and created fake diplomas, transcripts, and pay stubs. She claimed to have transferred to the University of Toronto Pharmacology program and to volunteer at the hospital for sick children. By age 22, she had never been to a club, been drunk, or gone on vacation without her family. Her parents eventually discovered the deception when Beach followed her to work. Jennifer was forbidden from seeing her boyfriend, Daniel Wong, a marijuana dealer who managed a Boston pizza restaurant. After Wong broke off the relationship in 2009 due to Jennifer's family restrictions, Jennifer fabricated a story to win him back. The couple then devised a plan to hire hitmen for $10,000, calculating Jennifer would inherit approximately $500,000. Wong connected Jennifer to Lenford Roy Crawford, who contacted Eric Carty, who recruited David Milvaganam. Jennifer was given a secret SIM card and iPhone to coordinate. On the evening of November 8, 2010, Jennifer unlocked the front door before going to bed, then spoke by phone to Milvaganam. Shortly after, Milvaganam and 2 other armed men entered. They demanded money, ransacked the bedroom, took Beach and Han to the basement, and shot both execution style with their heads covered with blankets. Beach Hapan passed that night at age 53. Han Pan survived despite being shot in the face, though he was permanently blinded. He was 57 years old. Jennifer was left unharmed and called 911 claiming she was tied to a banister. Red flags emerged immediately. Valuables were not stolen. Jennifer was unharmed and unblindfolded. Over 100 text messages were exchanged between Pan and Wong in the 6 hours before the crime. But what shattered the case wide open was something no one anticipated. Han woke from his coma. He told police he recalled seeing Jennifer whispering to one of the intruders in a friendly, soft manner. During her third police interview, Detective William Goetz used the Reed technique, and Jennifer confessed, claiming the plan was to end her own life, not her parents'. She was arrested on November 22, 2010. Wong, Crawford, Milvaganam, and Carty were arrested in January 2011. The trial began in March 2014 in Newmarket, Ontario, lasting approximately 10 months and 153 trial days, one of the longest in Canadian history. On December 13, 2014, Jennifer Pan, Daniel Wong, Lenford Crawford, and David Milvaganam were convicted of first-degree taking of life for Beach Ha Pan and attempted taking of life for Han Pan. All four were sentenced to life in prison with no parole eligibility for 25 years. Eric Carty was convicted separately. He passed in prison on April 26, 2018, stabbed in his cell at Kent Institution. In May 2023, the Court of Appeal for Ontario ruled the trial judge erred by not allowing the jury to consider a third scenario, that the plan targeted only the father, potentially reducing the charge for the mother's passing. A retrial was ordered on the first-degree charge. On April 10, 2025, the Supreme Court of Canada, in a 7-2 majority decision, upheld this ruling, ordering a new trial on first-degree taking of life while keeping attempted taking of life convictions intact. As of 2026, Jennifer Pan, age 39, remains incarcerated at Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario, subject to a lifetime non-communication order preventing contact with Han or Felix. She awaits retrial. Han Pan survived but is permanently blinded and unable to work. The identity of the third intruder who pulled the trigger remains unknown. Jennifer Pan constructed an elaborate false life rather than face her parents' disappointment. The next case involves perpetrators with no such elaborate planning. They spotted a mother and daughter at a grocery store, followed them home, and initiated 7 hours of terror that would reshape an entire state's legal landscape. The Cheshire Home Invasion. On a Sunday evening in July 2007, a mother and her 11-year-old daughter stopped at a grocery store in Connecticut. A stranger in the parking lot noticed them. He followed them home. Within 24 hours, 3 members of their family would be gone, and the lone survivor would spend the rest of his life advocating for the very laws that would ultimately fail to deliver the justice he sought. The Petit family lived at 300 Sorghum Mill Drive in Cheshire, Connecticut. Dr. William Pettit Jr. was an endocrinologist and medical director of the Joslin Diabetes Center, a Dartmouth graduate with an MD from the University of Pittsburgh. Jennifer Hawk Pettit, age 48, was a nurse and co-director of the health center at Cheshire Academy, who suffered from multiple sclerosis. Haley, age 17, had just graduated from Miss Porter's school and was headed to Dartmouth. Michaela, age 11, attended Chase Collegiate School and loved cooking. On Sunday evening, July 22nd, Jennifer and Michaela went to a local Stop and Shop. Joshua Komisarjevsky, age 26 and on parole for burglary, spotted them and followed them home. He texted accomplice Stephen Hayes, age 44. Both had met at a halfway house. Their texts included the words, "I am chomping at the bit to get started." At approximately 3 in the morning, on July 23rd, the two entered through an unlocked basement door. Komisarjevsky struck Dr. Pettit repeatedly with a baseball bat, and they bound him in the basement. Jennifer and both daughters were tied to beds upstairs. Around 9 in the morning, Hayes drove Jennifer to a Bank of America branch, where she told the teller 2 men were holding her family hostage. She withdrew $15,000. The bank manager called 911. Police set up a perimeter, but did not enter the home or intercept the vehicle. While Hayes was at the bank, Komisarjevsky sexually assaulted 11-year-old Michaela and photographed the assault on his cell phone. After returning home, Hayes sexually assaulted Jennifer and then strangled her. The two doused the house and the still-living daughters with gasoline and set the home ablaze. Haley escaped her restraints but collapsed from smoke inhalation at the top of the staircase. Michaela perished tied to her bed. Dr. Pettit escaped through a basement window despite severe injuries. Hayes and Komisarjevsky fled in the family car and were arrested 1 block away after crashing into a police cruiser. The invasion lasted approximately 7 hours. How does a community process a crime of this magnitude? And how does a legal system respond? Stephen Hayes was convicted on 16 of 17 counts on October 5, 2010, and sentenced to death on December 2, 2010. Joshua Komisarjevsky was convicted on all counts in 2011 and sentenced to death in 2012. On April 25, 2012, Governor Dannel Malloy signed a bill abolishing the death penalty in Connecticut for future cases, but exempting the 11 men on death row. However, on August 13, 2015, the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled 4-3 that the death penalty was unconstitutional retroactively, commuting all death sentences to life without parole. Both were resentenced to 6 consecutive life terms without the possibility of release. As of 2026, Stephen Hayes, now legally Linda Miley and age 62, came out as transgender, began hormone therapy in 2018, and was transferred to Oregon State Penitentiary in March 2023. In a January 2025 interview, Lee stated, "For the first time in my life, I am happy to be alive." Joshua Komisarjevsky, age 44, remains incarcerated in Pennsylvania, serving 6 consecutive life sentences. He attempted to take his own life 2 days after his 2016 transfer. Dr. William Petit founded the Petit Family Foundation, remarried in 2012, and has a son. He won election to the Connecticut House of Representatives in 2016 and served until January 2023. The crime originated from a mundane grocery store trip. Despite a real-time 911 call from the bank, police established a perimeter but did not intervene for over 30 minutes while the assaults, fatal strangulation, and arson occurred. Both perpetrators received death sentences but escaped execution when Connecticut abolished capital punishment, a decision this very case had delayed for years. A random encounter at a grocery store set the Cheshire tragedy in motion. The next case involves no stranger at all. A rising American diplomat, fluent in 5 languages and trained in counterintelligence, turned on his own family and then vanished so completely that nearly 50 years later, no one knows if he is alive or dead. Bradford Bishop. On March 1, 1976, a Yale-educated diplomat received news that he had been passed over for a promotion. That evening, he went shopping for a hammer, a shovel, and a gas can. By the following morning, his wife, his mother, and his 3 young sons were gone. He drove their bodies 275 miles south, set them ablaze in a swamp, and disappeared. The FBI hunted him for decades. They never found him. But in 2021, a woman in North Carolina took a DNA test hoping to find biological relatives. What she discovered instead was that her birth father was one of America's most wanted fugitives. William Bradford Bishop Jr. was born August 1, 1936, in Pasadena, California. He graduated from Yale, earned a master's in African Studies from UCLA, and completed 4 years of Army counterintelligence training. He was fluent in 5 languages. He served at State Department postings in Italy, Ethiopia, and Botswana, before returning to the Washington, D.C. headquarters in 1974. He lived at 8103 Lily Stone Drive in Bethesda, Maryland, with his wife Annette, age 37, 3 sons, Bradford III, who was 14, Brenton, who was 10, and Jeffrey, who was 5, and his mother Lobelia, age 68. Bishop was under psychiatric care, taking Serax for depression and insomnia. The family faced financial pressures. On March 1, 1976, Bishop was passed over for a promotion. It was described as the first glitch in the storybook tale. That evening, Bishop left his office claiming illness at approximately 5:30 in the evening. He withdrew cash from his bank, purchased a ball-peen hammer, gas can, shovel, and pitchfork from local stores, and returned home between 7:30 and 8 in the evening. Investigators believe he bludgeoned Annette first, as she was reading, then his mother Lobelia as she returned from walking the family dog, then his 3 sons as they slept. He loaded all 5 bodies into the family's 1974 Chevrolet Malibu station wagon. The next day, he drove approximately 275 miles south to a densely wooded swamp near Columbia, North Carolina, dug a shallow grave, and set the bodies ablaze. Forest rangers attracted by the smoke discovered the remains. Bishop's last confirmed sighting was at a sporting goods store in Jacksonville, North Carolina, purchasing tennis shoes. His station wagon was later found abandoned at a campground in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Could a man with counterintelligence training and a diplomatic passport truly vanish without a trace for nearly half a century? Bishop had approximately 1 week's head start before anyone suspected anything. Neighbors assumed the family was on a ski trip. His diplomatic passport was missing. On April 10, 2014, 38 years after the crime, the FBI placed Bishop on the 10 most wanted fugitives list with a $100,000 reward. He was removed on June 27, 2018, though the case remains active and an Interpol red notice remains in effect. Credible sightings were reported in Stockholm in 1978, Sorrento, Italy in 1979, and Basel, Switzerland in 1994, but none were confirmed. In 2014, the FBI exhumed an unidentified body from Alabama that resembled Bishop. DNA testing confirmed it was not him. Then came the breakthrough no one anticipated. In 2017, Kathy Gilchrist of North Carolina took a 23andMe DNA test hoping to find biological relatives. Through genealogical research, she traced her birth father to Bradford Bishop. The FBI collected her DNA and compared it against Bishop's profile, created from cigarette butts in the abandoned car. The FBI confirmed Gilchrist is Bishop's biological daughter, born in 1958, a fact unknown to anyone, including investigators, for 45 years. FBI Special Agent Karen Cody called it one of the biggest breaks in the case in decades. As of 2026, Bishop has never been declared legally dead. If alive, he would be 89 years old. The FBI continues to receive daily tips. The case remains open and active. Agent Cody has stated she believes Bishop may have adapted to life within the United States rather than fleeing abroad, describing him as like a chameleon. Some investigators believe he may have perished in the Smoky Mountains wilderness shortly after abandoning his car, but this has never been confirmed. Bradford Bishop's counterintelligence training gave him the tools to vanish. The next case involves a different kind of disappearance, not of the perpetrator, but of the truth. A young British immigrant fled to England within hours of his wife and infant daughter being found, and when he was captured, police discovered he had been shopping his story to tabloids to the highest bidder. Neil Entwistle. On a Friday morning in January 2006, A 9-month-old baby and her mother were shot in their Massachusetts home. The wounds were so small that the mother's head wound went through the wall and into the next room. The baby's head wound was so small that it was not even visible. The mother was taken to the hospital, where she was treated for her injuries. The baby was also taken to the hospital, where she was treated for her injuries. The mother and baby were both in stable condition. The police are still investigating the incident so small that the mother's head wound went undetected until autopsy. By Saturday morning, the husband had boarded a one-way flight to London. When police searched his laptop, they found he had been researching how to end a life with a knife and quick methods of self-harm. They also found he had been browsing escort services. Neil Entwistle was born September 18, 1978, in Worksop, England. His father was a coal miner, his mother a school canteen cook. He earned a master's in electronic engineering from the University of York, where he met Rachel Souza, an American from Massachusetts studying abroad. They married on August 23, 2003, in Plymouth, England, and had a daughter, Lillian Rose, on April 9, 2005. In late 2005, the family moved to the United States, renting a home at 6 Cubs Path in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, 26 miles west of Boston, for $2,700 per month. Behind the facade of a happy young family, Neil had been unemployed since September 2005, carried over $30,000 in credit card debt, was under investigation by eBay for fraudulent transactions, and ran internet schemes peddling spam and pornography. He was browsing escort services and had posted on a swingers website. On January 16, 2006, his laptop showed searches for how to take a life with a knife and methods of causing fatal harm. The next day, knife in neck and quick methods of self-harm. On Friday morning, January 20th, Neil took a .22 caliber Colt Diamondback revolver from his father-in-law, Joseph Matarazzo's home in Carver, Massachusetts. He shot Rachel in the forehead at close range while she lay in the master bedroom, then shot 9-month-old Lillian in the abdomen with a scission contact wound while the baby was cradled in her mother's arms. The bullet passed through Lillian and lodged above Rachel's left breast. The .22 caliber wounds were so small that Rachel's head wound went undetected until autopsy. He covered the bodies with blankets and returned the gun to his in-laws' home. On Saturday, January 21st, at approximately 5 in the morning, Neil purchased a one-way ticket on British Airways. By 8:15 in the morning, he had boarded a flight to London, leaving his rented BMW in airport parking. When Rachel's friends arrived for a scheduled Saturday dinner and got no answer, they called police. Officers conducted a welfare check that evening, but failed to discover the bodies hidden under bedding in the master bedroom. The bodies were found on Sunday, January 22nd, during a second, more thorough search. What kind of man flees a crime scene and immediately begins shopping his story to newspapers? Neil was reached by phone at his parents' home in Worksop, England, on January 23rd. He claimed he left Friday morning to shop, returned to find wife and daughter shot, covered them, drove to his in-laws' house to get the gun to end his own life, found the house locked, and then flew to England. Key forensic evidence: Neil's DNA on the gun handle, Rachel's DNA on the gun muzzle. He was arrested on February 9, 2006, by London Metropolitan Police at Royal Oak Underground Station. On his person, a one-page eulogy to Rachel, a draft letter pitching his story to newspapers to the highest bidder, and a page advertising escort services. Neil was tried in June 2008 in Woburn, Massachusetts. The defense argued Rachel committed harm to herself and her daughter due to postpartum depression. The defense called no witnesses, and Neil did not testify. On June 25, 2008, the jury found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree taking of life after fewer than 12 hours of deliberation. He was sentenced to 2 concurrent life sentences without parole, plus 10 years probation, with a condition he never profit from selling his story. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court affirmed the conviction in August 2012. The United States Supreme Court declined to hear the case in January 2013. In August 2023, he filed a pro se petition for a new trial, which has not succeeded. As of 2026, Neil Entwistle, age 47, is incarcerated at Old Colony Correctional Center in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, serving life without parole. His parents in England continue to maintain his innocence. Neil Entwistle's secret double life of financial ruin, internet schemes, escort obsessions, and pre-crime research was hidden behind the facade of a happy young immigrant family. The police's failure to find bodies on the first search and his flight to England within hours, followed by his attempt to sell his story to tabloids, revealed a man whose capacity for deception extended even beyond the grave he had created. If you're liking this video and you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We drop new cases every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Chris Benoit. On March 14, 2004, Chris Benoit stood in the ring at WrestleMania 20, tears streaming down his face, the World Heavyweight Championship raised above his head. His best friend, Eddie Guerrero, embraced him. It was professional wrestling's most iconic moment of triumph. 3 years later, Benoit would take the lives of his wife, his 7-year-old son, and himself over the course of a weekend. When doctors examined his brain, they found damage so severe it resembled that of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Christopher Michael Benoit was born May 21, 1967, in Montreal, Quebec. Over a 22-year career spanning Stampede Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WCW, and WWE, he became one of professional wrestling's most acclaimed performers. Trained in Stu Hart's legendary Hart Dungeon in Calgary, he held 30 championship titles and was known as the Canadian Crippler. His signature move was a diving headbutt from the top rope, a maneuver he performed thousands of times throughout his career. Nancy Benoit, known in wrestling as Woman, had her own storied career managing top performers in WCW and ECW. She married Benoit on November 23, 2000, after their on-screen romance, originally scripted by her then-husband, Kevin Sullivan, became real. Their son Daniel was born February 25, 2000. In May 2003, Nancy had briefly filed for divorce citing cruel treatment and threats, but dropped the complaint. On Friday, June 22, 2007, Benoit visited his physician, Dr. Phil Aston, who noticed no signs of distress. That night, Benoit took Nancy's life in an upstairs room. Her arms were restrained with coaxial cables, her feet duct-taped. Cause of passing, asphyxiation by strangulation. He placed a Bible next to her body. On Saturday, June 23rd, Benoit called colleague Chavo Guerrero, claiming Nancy and Daniel had food poisoning, and he would be late for a house show in Beaumont, Texas. He never appeared. Later that day, he took Daniel's life. The 7-year-old had been sedated with high levels of Xanax and was likely unconscious. Cause of passing, suffocation. A Bible was placed by the body. On Sunday, June 24th, between 3:51 and 3:58 in the morning, 5 text messages were sent from both Chris's and Nancy's phones to co-workers, providing the home address and noting the dogs are in the enclosed pool area. Benoit then ended his own life in the weight room using a cable from a lat pull-down machine. He was 40 years old. His computer search history showed he had researched the biblical prophet Elijah's resurrection of a dead child. On Monday, June 25th, after more than 24 hours without contact, WWE called Fayetteville police for a welfare check around 12:45 in the afternoon. 3 bodies were discovered at approximately 4 in the afternoon. That evening, WWE aired a 3-hour tribute show before learning the full circumstances. Once details emerged Tuesday, all tributes were immediately pulled. What could drive a celebrated athlete to commit such acts against his own family? On September 5, 2007, Dr. Julian Bales, chairman of neurosurgery at West Virginia University, announced findings from examining Benoit's brain. Severe CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, was found in all 4 lobes and the brainstem. The brain was riddled with tau protein aggregates. Dr. Robert Cantu stated it resembled that of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient, the most extensively damaged brain they had examined. Dr. Bailey's concluded these extreme changes are enough to explain aberrant behavior, including self-harm and harm to others. Benoit had told friends he suffered more concussions than he could count. This became one of the first high-profile CTE diagnoses outside boxing and football, extending research into professional wrestling and broadening the national conversation about sports-related brain trauma. However, some experts noted CTE-related violence tends to be impulsive, inconsistent with the premeditated, multi-day nature of Benoit's actions. WWE removed nearly all mentions of Benoit from its programming. He has not been inducted into the Hall of Fame and will not be. Policy changes included a strengthened talent wellness program, mandatory neurological baseline testing, banning of blading in 2008, banning folding chair strikes to the head in 2010, and new concussion protocols. WWE became the largest financial benefactor of the Concussion Legacy Foundation. As of 2026, Benoit's matches remain accessible on Peacock, but are not searchable or promoted. In January 2025, WWE champion Tommaso Ciampa publicly mentioned Benoit on Instagram, a rarity in the industry. The CTE diagnosis transformed this case from a straightforward act of domestic horror into a landmark moment in sports medicine. But while Benoit's brain damage offered a potential explanation, the next case offers no such answers. A former employee returned to his old workplace, not for revenge against his bosses, but against an innocent family. And police only caught him because of DNA on a half-eaten slice of pizza. The D.C. Mansion. In May 2015, a $40,000 ransom was delivered to a mansion near the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. The money arrived. Everyone inside still perished. When investigators searched for evidence, they found it in the most unlikely place: saliva on a discarded pizza crust that linked a former employee to one of the most horrific crimes in the capital's history. Savas Savopoulos, age 46, was CEO and president of American Iron Works, a construction company in Hyattsville, Maryland, that helped build the Verizon Center, now known as Capital One Arena. He lived with his wife Amy, age 47, their son Philip, age 10, and housekeeper Veralicia Figueroa, age 57, in a $4.5 million mansion on Woodland Drive Northwest in Washington, D.C.'s Woodley Park neighborhood. 2 teenage daughters, Abigail and Katerina, were away at boarding schools and survived. On Wednesday, May 13, 2015, Darren Dylon Wint entered the Savopoulos home. Wint was born November 27, 1980, in Guyana. He had worked as a welder at American Iron Works from 2003 to 2005, before being fired after threatening a coworker with a knife. He had an extensive criminal history, including assault, theft, and weapons charges. Figueroa and Philip were restrained first with duct tape and zip ties. Amy was forced to call Savas at work around 5:30 in the evening to come home. After Savas arrived, all adults were bound to chairs. During captivity, Amy ordered 2 Domino's pizzas, instructing the delivery person to leave them at the door. Philip was tortured to coerce the parents into arranging the ransom. On Thursday morning, May 14th, Savas's personal assistant, Jordan Wallace, withdrew $40,000 in cash and delivered it to the home around 10:30 in the morning, leaving it in a red sports car in the garage. After the money was delivered, all 4 victims were fatally harmed, beaten with a baseball bat, strangled, and stabbed. Philip was stabbed and burned in his bedroom. The medical examiner testified he may have been burned while still alive. The house was set ablaze. Firefighters responded around 1:30 in the afternoon and found the 4 victims. Amy's blue Porsche 911 was stolen and found burning in a church parking lot in Prince George's County. How does a perpetrator leave behind evidence as mundane as a pizza crust? DNA from saliva on a half-eaten Domino's pepperoni pizza crust was matched to Darren Wint. Additional DNA evidence linked him to a knife propping open a basement window and a construction vest inside Amy's burned Porsche. After the crime, his internet searches included how to beat a lie detector test and 5 countries with no U.S. extradition treaty. Wint was arrested on May 21, 2015, near the Maryland, D.C. border after a multi-state manhunt. He was riding with 2 women. A truck following him carried 2 men, including his brother Daryl. None of the 5 companions were charged, an enduring mystery. Cash and money orders were found in the vehicles. Wint's trial began September 2018 in D.C. Superior Court. He testified in his own defense, claiming his half-brother Daryl committed the crime and merely handed him a piece of pizza. After approximately 6 weeks of testimony from more than 60 witnesses, on October 25, 2018, Wint was found guilty on all 20 counts, including 4 counts of first-degree premeditated taking of life, kidnapping, extortion, arson, and theft. On February 1, 2019, Judge Juliet McKenna sentenced him to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of release. On December 15, 2022, the D.C. Court of Appeals upheld the conviction. As of 2026, Darren Wint remains incarcerated serving 4 consecutive life sentences. In May 2025, Fox 5 DC published a 10th anniversary retrospective. The Savopolis home was demolished in April 2017 after selling for $3 million. Wint's defense attorney claimed he does not like pizza and never eats pizza. Police initially stated the crime required the presence and assistance of more than one person, yet only Wint was ever charged. That question, who else was involved, remains one of the case's enduring mysteries. The D.C. Mansion case unfolded over approximately 22 hours in 2015. The next case predates it by nearly a century, yet its horror has lost none of its power. On Christmas Day, 1929, a North Carolina farmer gathered his family, dressed them in new clothes, posed them for a portrait, and then systematically ended each of their lives. The Lawson Family Christmas. In the days before Christmas 1929, a tobacco farmer in rural North Carolina did something extraordinary for a poor family during the Great Depression. He took everyone to Winston-Salem, bought them new clothes, and paid for a professional family portrait. Researchers now believe he wanted to preserve his family's image for history, because on Christmas morning, he would destroy them. Charles Davis Lawson, age 43, and Fanny Manring Lawson, age 37, were tobacco farmers in Germantown, Stokes County, North Carolina. They had 8 children, one of whom, William, had passed from pneumonia in 1920. By Christmas 1929, The household included 7 children: Arthur, age 19, Marie, age 17, Carrie, age 12, Maybelle, age 7, James, age 4, Raymond, age 2, and Mary Lou, age 4 months. On Christmas morning, Charlie sent Arthur, the eldest, on an errand to buy ammunition and go rabbit hunting. This deliberate absence would save Arthur's life. At approximately 1 in the afternoon, Charlie began with a 12-gauge shotgun. He ambushed Carrie and Maybelle as they walked to their uncle's house, shooting them near the tobacco barn and bludgeoning them to ensure their passing, then dragging their bodies inside the barn. He returned to the house and shot Fanny on the porch, then Marie inside the house. He found James and Raymond, who had tried to hide. Baby Mary Lou, 4 months old, was the last. After each, Charlie carefully arranged the bodies, crossing arms over chests and placing rocks under their heads in a ritualistic manner. Marie had been baking a Christmas cake that morning. It was found in the kitchen. Charlie then went into the woods behind the home. Evidence showed he paced around a tree for hours. Footprints circled the tree in the snow. As people gathered at the property, a single gunshot was heard. Charlie was found having taken his own life. Letters, addressed to his parents, were found on his person. Their contents were described as nonsensical. His 2 beagle dogs lay beside his body. What could drive a father to such methodical destruction of his own family? Multiple theories persist. Charlie had sustained a head injury months before, but a Johns Hopkins Hospital autopsy of his brain found no abnormalities. Financial stress from the October 1929 stock market crash has been suggested, but seems inconsistent with the family's recent spending. The most widely discussed theory emerged in Trudy J. Smith's 1990 book, White Christmas, Bloody Christmas, that Charlie had an incestuous relationship with daughter Marie, who may have been pregnant. Marie's close friend, Ella May, later disclosed that weeks before Christmas, Marie confided she was pregnant by her father. No physical evidence has confirmed this. Arthur Lawson survived because his father deliberately sent him away. He later married and had 4 children, but was lost in a motor vehicle accident in 1945 at age 35, just 15 years after the tragedy. Charlie's brother Marion immediately opened the home as a tourist attraction at 25 cents per visit. Approximately 5,000 people attended the funeral. Visitors stripped bark from the tree where Charlie was found and picked raisins from Marie's Christmas cake as souvenirs. Today, the Lawson Family Murder Museum operates inside Madison Dry Goods in Madison, North Carolina, and the Browder Cemetery gravesite remains a dark tourism destination. As of 2026, the case remains one of North Carolina's most notorious historical crimes. In December 2024, multiple outlets published 95th anniversary articles. The museum continues operating with ghost tours. No new substantive evidence about motive has emerged. The Lawson case haunts because of Charlie's eerie pre-crime behavior. The new clothes, the family portrait, the deliberate sparing of Arthur. Most haunting is his hours-long vigil in the woods, pacing circles in the snow around a tree, before turning the weapon on himself. But while Charlie Lawson was 43 years old, the next case involves a perpetrator who was just 16 and who walked free in 2026 after a change in the law. David Braum. On February 18, 1988, a 16-year-old walked into his Minnesota high school and told 2 trusted friends he had followed through with the plan. He spent the rest of the day eating pizza and trying to get a girl to go to the movies. That evening, police found 4 members of his family. 37 years later, he walked out of prison a free man. Bernard Braum, age 43, and Paulette Braum, age 42, lived in northwest Rochester, Minnesota, with their children. Joe, age 18 and not living at home, David, age 16, Diane, age 13, and Richard, age 11. The family was Catholic. Friends said David's parents constantly made him chop wood, and that David confided about alleged abuse at home. The family was reportedly attending counseling. On the night of February 17th, David got into an argument with his father at approximately 11:30 in the evening, reportedly over heavy metal music he was listening to. Some sources also cite religion. David stayed up until about 3 in the morning. At approximately 3 in the morning on February 18th, David took an axe to his parents' bedroom. A friend later recounted David's words. He said he hit his dad with an axe. He kept hitting his dad, and his dad kept on getting up. He then attacked his mother, Paulette, his brother Richard in his room, and his sister Diane, who was standing over their mother in the upstairs hallway. All four sustained numerous gashes to the head and upper body. The blood-stained axe was found in the basement, bearing David's palm and fingerprints. That morning, David went to Lourdes High School and told 2 trusted friends he had followed through with the plan. He spent the day eating at Godfather's Pizza and trying to get a girl to go to the movies. The friends told others. Reports reached school counselors, who notified law enforcement. Deputies discovered the 4 bodies that evening. David spent the night in a cement culvert near Valley High Drive with supplies for an attempted getaway. He was arrested on February 19th at a post office, overheard on a payphone saying, "It is too late now." His interview ended after 3 minutes when he asked for an attorney. Could a teenager who committed such violence ever be rehabilitated? The case was transferred from juvenile to adult court due to its severity. David pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. 4 psychiatrists testified for the prosecution, 2 finding him legally sane. On October 16, 1989, David was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree taking of life and sentenced to 3 consecutive and 1 concurrent life terms, a minimum of 52 years and 6 months before parole eligibility, targeting approximately 2037 to 2041. Then the law changed. In 2012, the United States Supreme Court ruled in Miller v. Alabama that states could no longer impose mandatory life without parole for juveniles. In 2023, Minnesota's legislature passed a law signed by Governor Tim Walz banning juvenile life without parole, retroactively making juvenile lifers eligible for parole after 15 years. Under this law, Brom became retroactively eligible as of 2003, dramatically accelerating his timeline. On January 10, 2025, Brom appeared before Minnesota's Supervised Release Board. He apologized and cited depression at the time of the crime. He was denied regular parole, but granted supervised work release. On July 29, 2025, David Brom, age 53, was released from Lino Lakes Prison to a Twin Cities halfway house with GPS monitoring. On January 27, 2026, the Supervised Release Board granted Brom full parole in a 5-2 vote. He lives in Anoka County under supervision, working in cabinetry. As of 2026, David Brom, now 54, has been granted full parole and lives under supervision in Anoka County, Minnesota. He is barred from returning to the vicinity of Olmsted County. A convicted quadruple perpetrator, sentenced to what was essentially life in prison, was released after 37 years due to a retroactive change in Minnesota juvenile sentencing law, nearly 2 decades earlier than the original judge intended. But while David Brom eventually walked free, the final case involves a man who has spent over 40 years fighting for his freedom. He maintains his innocence to this day. The evidence against him came from a silencer found 3 days after police had already closed the case. White House Farm. On the night of August 6, 1985, 5 members of an English family were found shot in their farmhouse. Police immediately concluded that the daughter, a diagnosed schizophrenic, had committed the act and then taken her own life. The case was closed within hours. But 3 days later, a cousin found a silencer in a gun cupboard, and when investigators measured the rifle with the silencer attached, they realized it was too long for the daughter to have reached the trigger. White House Farm was a Georgian farmhouse on Pages Lane in Tollishunt, Darcy, Essex, England, set among 300 acres of farmland. Neville Bamber, age 61, was a former RAF pilot, farmer, and magistrate, standing 6 feet 4 inches tall and physically imposing. June Bamber, age 61, was an intensely religious church warden who suffered from depression. They adopted 2 children, Sheila Caffell, age 28, a model known as Bambi, and Jeremy Bamber, 24. Sheila had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and was treated with antipsychotic drugs. Her twin sons, Daniel and Nicholas Caffell, age 6, were visiting the farm for a week-long stay. Jeremy lived rent-free in a cottage 3.5 miles away and resented working on the family farm. He had told a farm worker, "I am not going to share my money with my sister." He told an uncle, "I could take anyone's life. I could even take my parents' lives." At approximately 3:26 in the morning on August 7th, Jeremy called the local police station, reporting his father had phoned saying, "Please come over. Your sister has gone crazy and has the gun." Police surrounded the locked farmhouse for hours before entering. Inside, they found Neville in the kitchen, badly beaten and shot after a violent struggle. June was in the master bedroom, shot multiple times. Sheila was on the floor of her parents' bedroom with a .22 caliber Anschutz rifle against her throat, shot twice under the chin. Daniel and Nicholas lay in their beds. A total of 25 shots were fired, with the rifle's magazine reloaded at least twice. Detective Chief Inspector Thomas Jones led the investigation and was so certain Sheila had committed the act in a psychotic episode, then ended her own life, that he ordered Jeremy's questioning cousins out of his office. The crime scene was catastrophically mishandled. Officers tramped through blood. Bedding and carpets were burned to spare Jeremy trauma. No forensic photographs were taken for weeks. 3 days later, on August 10th, Jeremy's cousin David Boutflower found the rifle's silencer in a gun cupboard. It contained Sheila's blood type inside the baffles and bore red paint traces matching scratches above where Neville was found. This became the pivotal physical evidence. If the silencer was attached when Sheila was shot, the rifle was too long for her to reach the trigger to shoot herself under the chin. Since her first throat wound was incapacitating, and the second immediately fatal, she could not have removed the silencer and placed it in a cupboard. Sheila also had no fingerprints on the gun, no blood on her hands, no gunshot residue, and undamaged fingernails, inconsistent with overpowering her 6'4" father. About a month later, Jeremy's girlfriend, Julie Mugford, changed her statement to police. She alleged Jeremy had discussed planning this beforehand, and that on the night itself, he called and whispered, "It is done." Jeremy was arrested on September 8, 1985. Jeremy's trial began October 14, 1986, at Chelmsford Crown Court. The judge told the jury, "It comes down to this. Do you believe Julie Mugford or do you believe Jeremy Bamber?" On October 28, 1986, he was found guilty on all 5 counts by a 10-2 majority verdict and sentenced to life imprisonment. The minimum tariff was later increased to a whole life tariff, meaning he will never be released. He is one of approximately 75 inmates in the United Kingdom serving such a sentence. Jeremy has launched multiple appeals. The Criminal Cases Review Commission referred the case to the Court of Appeal in 2001 based on new DNA evidence, but the Court of Appeal upheld the conviction on December 12, 2002. Further applications in 2004, 2009, and 2012 were rejected. In March 2021, a new application based on 350,000 documents released after a public interest immunity order expired was submitted with 10 grounds of appeal. A significant development came in July 2024 when New Yorker journalist Heidi Blake interviewed Police Constable Nicholas Milbank, who confirmed he received a 999 call from inside White House Farm at 6:09 in the morning, a time when all occupants were supposedly deceased and Jeremy was standing outside with police. If true, this could constitute an alibi. Milbank subsequently made a contradictory statement to Essex police and passed away shortly after, in 2024. In July 2025, the Criminal Cases Review Commission announced it had reviewed 4 of Bamber's 10 grounds and decided they should not be referred to the Court of Appeal. Work continues on the remaining 6 grounds. As of 2026, Jeremy Bamber, age 65, is incarcerated at Her Majesty's Prison, Wakefield, serving a whole life tariff. He has spent over 40 years in prison and maintains his innocence. His legal team continues to challenge 6 remaining grounds through the Criminal Cases Review Commission and has threatened judicial review of the provisional rejection. He has worked as a prison peer partner and won awards for transcribing books in Braille. He passed a lie detector test in 2007, though such tests are inadmissible in United Kingdom courts. Police initially accepted the self-harm and harm theory so completely that they destroyed critical evidence, burning blood-soaked bedding, and did not properly photograph the scene for weeks. It was a cousin, not police, who found the silencer 3 days later. Julie Mugford's dramatic reversal, standing by Jeremy at the funeral only to tell police a month later that he had whispered "it is done," shattered his defense. She then sold her story for £25,000 to the News of the World. The 2024 New Yorker investigation, suggesting a 999 call from inside the sealed house while Jeremy was outside, and the passing of the key witness shortly after, add layers of mystery that keep this case alive 4 decades later. 10 families, 10 twists no one saw coming. Some cases are closed, others remain open, and a few will be debated for decades to come. Thanks for watching. Click here for the next video.